Tonight, several breaking stories as we come on the air. The stabbing spree in Seattle tonight. At least 10 people stabbed, 5 more stabbings late today. Also, the fires burning tonight from outside Los Angeles to just outside New York City. 14,000 evacuated outside L.A. and the fire right across the George Washington Bridge in New York. Tonight, the FBI on the new Iranian plot to kill President-elect Trump. First tonight, the images coming in now. A chilling stabbing spree in Seattle. At least 5 people stabbed late today. At least 10 stabbings in more than 24 hours. Are they linked? What authorities are now saying. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas standing by in the breaking news, what he's learned. Tonight, the fires outside Los Angeles and outside New York. More than 14,000 people evacuated outside L.A. The fires still raging tonight. And dangerously dry conditions across the Northeast. The fires across the Hudson River from New York City. Tonight, the FBI on the new Iranian plot to kill President-elect Trump. 3 suspects, including 2 Americans, now charged. Tonight, President-elect Trump working on building his team. And this evening, sources now telling ABC News that Elon Musk was on the call between Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky. And Musk was also there for the call with the president of Turkey. The horrific images coming in tonight. Israel soccer fans attacked and beaten by violent mobs in Amsterdam following a match against the Dutch team. Here in the U.S. tonight, federal authorities investigating alarming racist text messages sent to people in more than 12 states, including children. The texts sent from unknown numbers addressing recipients by name. In New York City tonight, the powerful SUV explosion rocking a neighborhood in Queens. Homes and cars damaged. The cruise ship, rocked by a sudden squall, winds up to 80 miles per hour. For the first time since the world witnessed that devastating fire more than 5 years ago, the bells of Notre Dame ringing across Paris tonight. And they were born premature, both in the same NICU. What's happened now, all these years later? Our Persons of the Week.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Friday night. We begin tonight with the breaking news coming out of Seattle at this hour. A stabbing spree, at least 5 stabbed in Seattle late today. 10 people stabbed in the same area over the last day and a half. Authorities want to know if this is all related. They believe most of these attacks are. Authorities say those 5 people stabbed late this afternoon in the Chinatown area of Seattle. Again, at this point, they believe a total of 10 people stabbed in multiple locations in the same neighborhood over the last 2 days. Tonight, we have just learned a suspect is in custody. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, with us live tonight. Pierre, what have you learned?
Well, David, it was a nightmare scenario playing out over a series of hours with an assailant attacking unsuspecting victims, sending some to the emergency room. Tonight, scenes of chaos on the streets of Seattle. Officers racing to treat victims of a stabbing spree.
This is a horrific tragedy, a mass casualty event.
At least 10 people attacked in the Chinatown neighborhood over 38 hours. 5 people stabbed just today. Police are investigating if one of the stabbings involving a robbery is also related.
The injuries to those victims range from a minor cut to severe stab wounds.
Witnesses identifying a suspect in a series of what appear to be random attacks. That person now in custody. 4 of the stabbing victims today were hospitalized, and tonight the investigation is just getting started. David?
Pierre Thomas with the breaking news, the stabbing spree in Seattle tonight. Pierre, thank you. Now to the extreme weather danger across the country, the fire danger and the fires outside Los Angeles. And tonight, the fire across the George Washington Bridge here in New York City. Outside L.A., thousands of firefighters remain on the fire lines at this hour. They're helped tonight by slower winds, but the fire's still raging. 14,000 people evacuating. And tonight, the images outside New York City, a helicopter dropping water from the Hudson River on a fire burning near the George Washington Bridge. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, on the fires in the west and here in the east and the dangerously dry conditions fueling them.
Tonight, more than 2,400 firefighters on the front lines outside Los Angeles, battling the most ferocious wildfire so far this year, finally able to shift the focus from saving lives to saving homes. Firefighters still haven't gained control of the so-called mountain fire. Ventura County air units making those crucial water drives.
I'm going to bring a copy over here.
More than 14,000 still under evacuation orders, many staying in Red Cross shelters.
Whole families are coming in. They're in tears.
They know they've lost their home. Some of them have lost some pets. So it's very, very emotional.
And as a clearer picture of the devastation emerges, house after house incinerated, shell-shocked families pick up the pieces. Rebecca Vallejo managing to salvage her father-in-law's coin collection.
This is what's left of the coin collection?
Yes, but look at what I think is cool.
The fire burned so hot it melted the coins together.
Look at this.
The same system that helped fuel those furious Santa Ana winds, now dumping feet of snow in the Rockies. States of emergency in New Mexico and Colorado. Authorities warning travelers there to be prepared to be stranded if they venture out. And from Boston to Philly to New York, gusty winds and the driest fall on record, fueling rare wildfires. This one right near New York's George Washington Bridge. Helicopters dropping water from the Hudson River. Our Ike Ejachi is there.
Just across the river from New York City, you can see the flames still burning in the bush right over there. And firefighters say this blaze is only about 30% contained.
Meanwhile, back in California, Madison O'Donnell and her father lost almost every possession here. But for her, there's only one thing that matters.
We had 3 dogs and only 2 made it out, and all I care about is finding Blue. He's 10-year-old pit bull. We rescued him from the Ventura County Animal Shelter here in Camarillo 2 years ago. He's microchipped, he's deaf, and he's the sweetest boy.
David, this is what's left of the O'Donnell house, just ashes, and it's what's left of their car collection. Now, with 12,000 additional homes threatened, firefighters tell us they've got to put out any remaining spot fires before another possible Santa Ana wind event arrives here next week. David.
We're thinking about all of these families who've lost everything over these last couple of days. Matt Gutman again tonight. Matt, thank you. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg of our station here in New York, WABC, tracking the fire dangers tonight. Lee?
David, you could see and smell smoke here in New York City from that fire you mentioned across the Hudson in New Jersey, and conditions stay pretty poor into the start of the weekend. Severe drought across the Northeast for the first time in more than 20 years, extreme drought across southern New Jersey. So you factor in the drought, you have the low humidity, the gusty winds. You are primed for fire formation and spread. The red flag warnings have been extended from New York City to Boston into tomorrow. Meanwhile, a storm out west is bringing blizzard conditions to parts of New Mexico. Over a foot of snow near Denver and treacherous travel on the eastern side, flash flooding, and even a tornado watch in Dallas and Waco. This is the dynamic storm that's going to move eastward over the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys, and this is what we're hoping will bring much needed rain to the Northeast. We think that's coming especially later Sunday and Sunday night, maybe about 1/3 of an inch of rain here in New York City. It's something. It'll be the most beneficial rain here in 40 days. David?
And it is really needed. Lee Goldberg with us again tonight. Lee, thank you. We turn now to the FBI and what they say is a new alleged Iranian plot to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump that they've now uncovered. The FBI says Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard triggered the plot, aiming for an assassination before the election. Tonight, 3 people charged, 2 in custody here in New York. Prosecutors say Iran has long been out for revenge. President-elect Trump has been made aware of this. Here's our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Kotursky, tonight.
Tonight, investigators are detailing a new Iranian plot to kill President-elect Trump during the final weeks of the campaign for revenge. In mid to late September, 2 months after a gunman tried to kill Trump in Pennsylvania, the FBI says Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard Corps instructed an Afghan operative with a criminal background to focus on surveilling and ultimately assassinating former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. On October 7th, court records say the operative, Farhad Shakiri, was told to provide a plan within 7 days to kill Trump, and if he couldn't, to wait until after the election, because the Iranians assessed that Trump would lose the election, and afterward it would be easier to assassinate him. Federal prosecutors say Iran has been determined to avenge the death of Revolutionary Guard General Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in an American drone strike during Trump's first term. The FBI learned of the latest plot from the very man asked to arrange it. The criminal complaint says Shakiri spoke voluntarily from Tehran,
I received a phone call from the FBI
telling the FBI he was first instructed to target Iranian-American writer and activist Mahsa Ahmadinejad. Prosecutors said he recruited 2 Americans he met in a New York prison to assist. Tonight, those men are under arrest and in custody. The complaint says Iran also told Shakiri to kill 2 people described as Jewish business people residing in New York City because of their support for Israel. Then he was told to put aside his other efforts and focus on Trump.
Attorney General Merrick Garland said tonight, David, there are few actors in the world that pose as grave a threat to national security as Iran. The president-elect was made aware of Iran's intent to kill him, but his spokesman said tonight, David, nothing will deter Trump's return to the White House. David?
Aaron Gutersky with us tonight. Aaron, thank you. Tonight, President-elect Trump working on putting together his team for the White House, and the president-elect says he has now spoken with dozens of foreign leaders since his reelection. Tonight here, we've learned top Trump supporter Elon Musk was on the call with Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky and listening in on the call with the president of Turkey. ABC's Rachel Scott in West Palm Beach, Florida tonight.
Tonight, a revealing new glimpse at just how influential Elon Musk could be in Donald Trump's administration.
We have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Sources tell ABC News that Musk was at Mar-a-Lago, listening in as the president-elect took a congratulations phone call from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump at one point even handing the phone to Musk, who then spoke with Zelensky himself. According to sources, Zelensky thanked Musk for his Starlink satellite system, which Ukraine has relied on for communication in its war with Russia. The world's richest man pumping upwards of $175 million into helping Trump win.
Take over, Elon, just take over.
By election night, there he was, part of the Trump family photo. The phone call with Zelensky raises new questions about the sweep of his role in a Trump White House, especially considering his billions of dollars in federal contracts. Sources tell ABC News Musk was present while Trump fielded calls from at least one other foreign leader, Turkish President Erdogan. It comes as Democrats reflect on what went wrong. Tonight, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi telling the New York Times that if President Biden had dropped out sooner, quote, there may have been other candidates in the race. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. Pelosi telling the Times she has spoken with Kamala Harris and believes a competitive primary could have helped the vice president. I think she would have done well in that and been stronger going forward. But we don't know that. That didn't happen. Tonight, Harris's former running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, returning home, telling his supporters it's time for Americans to put the bitterness of the election in the past.
I think sometimes we can be quick to judge people who don't agree with us, to assume that they act out of cruelty or fear or self-interest. I think we ought to swallow, and this is me in this as I'm speaking about myself, swallow a little bit of pride and look a little harder to find common ground with our neighbors who didn't vote like we did in this election.
Sources tell us President-elect Donald Trump spent the day at Mar-a-Lago meeting with a team of advisors going over national security positions in his administration. We were also told that his new chief of staff, Susie Wiles, has been deeply involved in those discussions, David.
Rachel Scott again tonight. Rachel, thank you. Overseas tonight, disturbing images coming in from Amsterdam. Israel soccer fans attacked and beaten by violent mobs following a match against the Dutch team. Here's our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, tonight.
Tonight, Israeli soccer fans ambushed and beaten on the streets of Amsterdam in what authorities are condemning as anti-Semitic attacks.
Now you know how it feels, sir?
Videos circulating online showing an anti-Semitic mob chasing a man down. Much of the violence erupting after a soccer game between an Israeli team and a Dutch team. 62 people arrested, 5 Israelis treated at the hospital. Dutch officials say the attacks fueled by calls on social media before the game to target Jews. But tension had also been building for days. This video circulating online shows a man ripping down a Palestinian flag as people yell profanities. Despite a ban on pro-Palestinian demonstrations near the soccer stadium, protesters showed up anyway, expressing anger over the wars in Gaza and Lebanon. And according to online postings, they were prepared for violence. David, there'd already been a huge rise in anti-Semitism in Europe, but ever since the war in Gaza began, that's only got worse. David?
Ian Pannell, thank you, Ian. Back here in the U.S. tonight into a disturbing wave of racist text messages sent to Americans, including children, in at least a dozen states. The texts addressed to people using their names sent from anonymous accounts. And tonight, the FBI and authorities in several states now investigating. Here's ABC's Steve Osunsami.
Federal law enforcement officials tonight say they're not sure who's sending them or if they're coming from inside or outside the United States, but confirm that racist text messages have lit up the phones of black and brown Americans in more than a dozen states so far. And somehow the senders have the right names. The texts come from unfamiliar numbers, telling people they've been selected to pick cotton at the nearest plantation, to be ready at a certain time, and be prepared to be searched upon arrival.
I kept thinking, what have I done? Why is this targeted at me? And then when I realized it was happening everywhere, it made me feel horrible, too.
Jackie Bradley says this is not okay. Her 12-year-old granddaughter got one of the messages last night.
I wanted to stop.
And I want people to come together and just stop this nonsense. I mean, when you're getting kids involved, let alone people of color receiving these texts, but then you send this to a child? If you have to prosecute somebody, I don't care, prosecute them, because this has gone too far.
Some of the texts were sent through a free service called Text Now. The company says it has disabled the anonymous accounts. The NAACP tonight says it's no accident that all this is happening after the election, saying that racist groups are feeling emboldened. Top prosecutors in states like Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina, and Alabama are all condemning this and investigating, and authorities are warning people who are getting these messages not to click on any links inside them. David?
All right. Steve Osunsami. Steve, thank you. We do have one note on the economy tonight, the week ending with record highs again this Friday. The Dow gaining 259 points, going above 44,000 for the first time before settling back just shy of that mark. When we come back tonight in New York City, the powerful SUV explosion rocking a neighborhood in Queens. You'll see the homes and cars damaged. Also, the cruise ship hit by a sudden squall, winds up to 80 miles per hour. The passengers rocked. And 2 babies in the NICU. 28 years later, the nurse who was there and those babies with quite the update. Our Persons of the Week. Tonight, a powerful blast rocking a neighborhood here in New York City. Authorities say an SUV loaded with dangerous materials exploded, severely damaging 5 homes and several cars in South Ozone Park, Queens. The SUV's owner is a plumber who says he had pressurized cylinders in the car and that one of them may have been leaking. No one was hurt in that blast. When we come back here tonight, the cruise ship slammed by a sudden storm. Passengers rocked. The images from inside the ship tonight. And the sound returning at Notre Dame in Paris. Tonight, you'll hear it in a moment here. To the index of other news tonight, a Royal Caribbean cruise ship rocked by a sudden squall off Tenerife, Spain. Passengers on board the Explorer of the Seas say they could feel the ship listing, knocked around by 80-mile-an-hour winds. Shops, restaurants, and bars were damaged. Passenger belongings were tossed throughout cabins. 1 person was injured. More than 5 years after that devastating fire witnessed by the world, the bells of Notre Dame ringing again. A ceremony held today revealing 3 new bells about to be installed in the cathedral. The world watching as Notre Dame was severely damaged by fire. You'll remember the spire collapsing. We took a first-hand look at the damage back then. The restoration now nearly complete. That cathedral on schedule to reopen December 8th. Incredible. When we come back here tonight, they were born 28 years ago. A boy just 1 pound 5 ounces. A little girl just 2 pounds 7 ounces. A few feet apart in the NICU. Tonight, 3 decades later. You have to see this. Finally tonight here, our Persons of the Week. Every day in hospitals across America, the doctors and nurses hard at work in the NICU, caring for babies born premature. And tonight, proof their work leads to extraordinary full lives and forever bonds. Our Persons of the Week. Tonight in Dearborn, Michigan, a wedding celebration like none other. Newlyweds Hayden and Rachel Sacchi in the Corewell Health Dearborn Hospital NICU. Rachel in her wedding dress. They're both there to honor the doctors and nurses who cared for them nearly 3 decades ago. Incredibly, both of them were in the NICU 28 years ago. Here they are, both holding photos of when they were being cared for, born premature, the nurses taking care of them. The 2 families meeting during an intense and emotional time, both grateful for the care they received and the bond they would create. The newborns would be okay, the families staying in touch, getting together over the years. Rachel's family would move away, but the 2 moms would stay in touch. And when it was time for senior prom and Hayden needed a date, Rachel's mom told Hayden's mom he should ask her. The 2 went together, they began dating, and then they got engaged. And tonight, at 28 years old, they're now married. And to celebrate, the 2 wanted to go back to where it all began, the NICU. To say thank you, the hospital documenting the moment. Also there, the nurse who cared for them both. Look at the image of her with them all those years ago. Nurse Valerie Holt-Williams.
I'm just so happy for them. It was so nice that me and all the nurses and physicians here were able to take part in caring for them and watching them grow into great young adults.
And right here tonight,
hi, David.
The newlyweds, Mr. and Mrs. Sacchi, and their message.
We cannot thank the staff enough for their kindness, skill, and dedication. They went above and beyond to care for us.
Parents of little ones in the NICU, your strength, love, and patience in these trying times are building the foundation for a brighter future. Hold on, better days are coming.
And so we choose Mr. and Mrs. Saki, and of course, the doctors and nurses in the NICUs across this country caring for the babies. I'll see you Monday. Good night.